Melissa and welcome to Oh My Word Melly. So guys, I finally read The Chain of Gold and The Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, the first two books of the Last of Us Trilogy, which is the latest series in the Shadowhunter universe. And guys, I am in love with the books. So today's video is going to be about me talking about these books and giving you points of what I liked and didn't like in a very overall or like a high level way, and trying not to spoil most of it for you. So the Last Hours trilogy and only the first two books are out, and the third and final book will be released surprisingly on the 1st of November in 2022. And here I was for some reason thinking it's going to be released in March 2022. And now that it has dawned upon me that I have to wait for one more year and more months, I don't know how I'm going to survive. So the Last of Us Trilogy is a sequel to the Infernal Devices trilogy, also by Cassandra Clare. Guys, you all know already that the Infernal Devices trilogy is my most loved trilogy or series in the world of fantasy, and I can't recommend this enough, and I highly recommend that y'all read the Infernal Devices first before y'all get into the Last of Us trilogy, because that's how you will see the references or how the characters are related and have more connections to the characters. So highly recommend that y'all read this. It's like set 20-ish years after the Infernal Devices. So Will and Tessa are married, Jem is still adjusting to be a silent brother, and oh my god, that hurt. The Last of Us trilogy follows mainly the children of our loved characters from the Infernal Devices, like the children of Will and Tessa, the children of Cicely and Gabriel Lightwood, and also the children of Gideon and Sophie, Charlotte and Henry. And guys, trust me, I had like a special bond with those characters in the Infernal Devices, and I am in love with their children's characters as well. Like, for some reason, I feel like I have a better connection and a better bond with the Shadowhunters who are set in the Victorian or the Edwardian era in London, like more than I am attached to the characters of the series that are in the current world or in the present world that are set. So Will and Tessa have two children called James and Lucy. Then let me see, there were like so many children. I had to like map them out, otherwise I was getting confused. So like, see, I mapped them out. So then we have Charlotte and Henry had Matthew and Charles. Cicely and Gabriel had three children called Annalise, Christopher and Alexander. And Gideon and Sophie had three children as well, called Barbara, Eugenia and Thomas. And guys, trust me, the children are as witty and hilarious and amazing as Will, Jem, Tessa, Gabriel and Gideon were. It was so hard to picture Will as an adult, Will who is married, growing old, having children. It was so hard and so emotional because I love Will and Jem. That had me like emotionally bound, attached, and I don't know how to explain that feeling, but I was like trying hard to imagine that. Throughout the book, my bond with them grew more and more, and I really want Will and Tessa's story to be said. I'm so happy that the last hours does follow their story as well. So talking about Chain of Gold, we get to know a few new characters like Cordelia Carstairs, Elias Carstairs, Alistair Carstairs, and as well as Sona Carstairs, who is cousins to Jem Carstairs or brother Zachariah. And Elias is Jem's uncle. The cover of Chain of Gold is Cordelia Carstairs, who has red hair, and Cordelia's mother has a Persian background or a heritage. So that was something that really inspired me, because she wears something called a rusari, which is a hijab or like a headscarf covering her hair, which is something I really loved to see in this, to see such a representation. So it's something I really liked. So James, along with Matthew Fairchild, Christopher Lightwood and Thomas Lightwood, have their own gang called the Merry Thieves, and that's one of the main reasons I loved both of these books, because I like the dynamic in that gang. So for most of us, or like most of y'all think that these children's characters are actually new. But if y'all have read Tales of Shadow Academy, y'all get to know most of the references that were in the book, or references to incidents that happened, are mentioned in Tales of Shadow Academy. And also, if y'all have read Ghost of Shadow Market, y'all get to meet these characters in depth, and also get to know the backstory or the story behind Matthew Fairchild as well. So let's get to know the story. Cordelia and her family, Elias Carstairs, Sona Carstairs, as well as Alistair Carstairs, have been always traveling from place to place for different reasons, and now they are finally coming to London to settle down after her father, Elias Carstairs, has been accused for some crime and is being prisoned in Idris and is undergoing a trial. So Cordelia's mother thinks when they come to London and mingle with the popular or the well-known Shadowhunter families, Cordelia will be able to marry into a good family that will help her or take away most of the shame and the issues that can happen if their father is found guilty. So Cordelia has always been friends with Lucy Herondale, who is Will's and Tessa's daughter, and as well as James Herondale. And since she was small, she has always had a huge crush on James Herondale. And Cordelia and Lucy are meant to be parabatised. So soon after Cordelia comes to London, another well-known Shadowhunter family comes to London from Idris as well. And that's Tatiana Blackthorne and her ward or adoptive daughter Grace Blackthorne. But honestly guys, I hated those two characters and I don't even want to talk about them. Anyhow, so when Grace comes to London, everyone finds out that James and Grace have known each other for a long time, as long as they knew Cordelia Carstairs. And what they did not know was there was a secret or an unknown promise of James and Grace having an affair, and also being dating, and as well as he has promised to marry her. That actually was a nice plot twist and a nice love triangle, because Cordelia has always had a crush on James since she was small, and it did complicate matters and create drama, which was exciting. This book, when it started out, what it was seen is after the Clockwork War in the Infernal Devices, that the demon activity in London in this past 1900s, I guess, or late 1800s, has been low, and most of the new or the younger Shadowhunters actually did not they had their guards down, because they did not have so many demon activities like it was there previously during Will's and Jem's time. So all of a sudden, when all these youngsters were hanging out, having a picnic with all the other Shadowhunter family's children, they get attacked by some sort of a demon who can travel, or some sort of a demon who can travel during daytime without being wounded. And they have not met any demon who can travel during the day or when there is light. These demons started poisoning Shadowhunters, targeting Shadowhunters, and it was such a disarray that they had to find a cure because people who got poisoned started dying. Once this starts happening, James, Cordelia, Lucy, and the other merry thieves start finding a way to, or they start finding who this demon is, who is controlling this, is this some sort of a warlock behind this, and they try to find a cure as well. During the process of trying to find what's happening, how can these people or how can these demons travel in the daytime and only attack Shadowhunters, we find out, as readers, we find out that James as well as Lucy has some sort of powers due to their ancestry of Tessa being a warlock and Tessa's father being one of the princes of hell, and because of Tessa's unusual genealogy where she is half Shadowhunter and half warlock, some sort of powers have been passed on to Lucy and James as well, but their powers are totally different to each other. We find out that James can enter the shadow realms or basically go into demon realms, and he starts seeing these murders happening but in a total different realm, and he starts piecing together that there is something connected to the killings that are happening with this demon who can travel under the light and what he is seeing. At the same time, we see that Lucy starts seeing a ghost only who she can see, and she finds out after some time that that ghost is Jesse Blackthorn, Tatiana's dead son, and he passed away for some reason that we don't know in this book, but we get to know in the other, and I'm not going to say what. So James can go into shadow realms and Lucy can command the dead. Even Lucy was not aware of it. She just thought because all Herondales can see ghosts that she was seeing it, but she also couldn't piece together why James couldn't see Jesse, but only she. But throughout the story, there was a point where Cordelia gets in danger and Lucy tries to save her, and unknowingly she commands most of the ghosts in the Thames, or I think it was the Thames, in the Thames, to rescue Cordelia. That's when Lucy started realizing that she has powers as well. I know I'm taking so long explaining this book, and I have to explain the other book as well, but trust me guys, like, it's so amazing. I love this book. I love the other one more. I have to say that Cassandra Clare has done amazing because we get to know each and every character in this book. Like, both of these books, I guess even the third book, will be really character driven rather than plot driven, which was something I really liked because it helped me bond more with the characters and feel a deep connection, like a deep connection with the characters that made me experience this book along with them. So we also find out that James, since they were small, used to go to Idris to spend the summer, where he met Grace Blackthorn at the Blackthorn Manor, and they started developing a friendship that later on developed into a relationship which he thought, or where he thought he loved her so much. And we start finding, or we start feeling, that there is something off with Grace Blackthorn, just like Tatiana Blackthorn. So Tatiana Blackthorn tries as much as possible to destroy the Herondales and the Carstairs because she thinks that they are responsible for the death of her husband Rupert Blackthorne as well as her son Jesse Blackthorne. But she's just pondering over hatred to all Shadowhunters, and she's working with the Prince of Hell, I think, to destroy all these Shadowhunters because she thinks all Shadowhunters are cruel and she does not see. Like, her hatred has made her blind and she starts blaming everything, even if it's not fault of the Shadowhunters, saying that it's the fault of the Shadowhunter. In Chain of Gold, we also see that Cordelia is the bearer of the legendary sword Cortana, which was made by Wayland the Smith. So Cordelia manages to wound the Prince of Hell, but they actually can't kill him, but they can hurt him, and they think, okay, with that everything is going to be all right. Also, in the meantime, Grace manipulates James to burn down Blackthorn Manor in Idris, which Tatiana starts accusing James of because apparently Grace has told Tatiana what James is up to, and because he was going to be imprisoned or trialed as a criminal for arson, Cordelia she compromises her dignity and virtue and say that she and James were spending the night at that time of the fire, so it can't be James, which during that era was not something that was accepted. It was really frowned upon, a girl spending time with a guy, which leads into a marriage of convenience where James proposes to Cordelia to save her dignity, and that's where this book ends. I know telling it like that, it's nothing much, it's some boring plot, but honestly guys, if y'all read this, y'all will actually fall in love with this. So this book really had hurt my heart. My heart was pining. I was so thankful that I had book 2 to continue reading, because if I had to read this with that cliffhanger and wait for the next book, I don't think I would have survived. This book is full of diversity and representation of the LGBTQ community as well as minor races, because Cordelia and them have a Persian background. Like I said, that culture is captured very well as well. There are Persian dialects throughout the book which are amazing, and stories that Cordelia read Persian stories and stuff like that, which is amazing. And also, so across all Cassandra Clare books, we have seen that she gives representation to the LGBTQ community, which was really prominent here, because if we take Alastair Carstairs, he had a secret where he was in love with Charles Fairchild. If you all have also read The Ghost of Shadowmarket, you would have met Anna Lightwood, who actually dresses like a boy and she prefers women as well, so that representation was there. We also find out that Matthew Fairchild is bi, he likes both women and men, so those representations were there, and I thought that it was a good thing, because not all books have all the representations at once, so I really loved it. I know this book is like 600 pages big, and sometimes you might see like a high and low situation in the plot, but I really like that this book was not plot driven, I should say. So if you all are in for the plot, then you all will feel that it was like, but it actually was character driven, so we see a lot of these characters' point of views from them, so the story is set in many points of view. And because I had the Chain of Gold Collector's first edition, I was privileged with a nice artwork of the Merry Thieves, Lucy, Cordelia, Jessie and Grace as well. And also we had a bonus story which broke my heart. Cassandra Clare and her epilogues and bonus stories just rip my heart into pieces because we see Will and Tessa's wedding day, the night before the wedding and the day after the wedding, the cold feet, the doubts that pass through Will's mind, the pain, and James, or like Gem Casters, not the sorry, like Gem Casters, that was really heartbreaking. Like, he was there at the wedding, though Will and Tessa didn't see. It was so emotional, like the story of the three of them. It was something I really loved. Like, it had me weeping. It was so nice to see their wedding and how things led after the Infernal Devices ended. Coming into Chain of Iron, it starts with the wedding of James and Cordelia. So a part that I missed in Chain of Gold actually is the relationship between Cordelia's brother and the Merry Thieves. So they don't get along. They are like sworn enemies because of things that happened in the Shadow Academy where they all studied. So that you get a glimpse of what happened in the Tales of Shadow Academy book. That's where you first meet these characters actually, and like now after I got to know them, he only makes sense, because when I read like the Tales of Shadow Academy, I was wondering who it was, because I read it even like I read it after the Mortal Instruments but before the Infernal Devices, so I didn't even know who Will was back then, but now it just makes sense. You see why they are not getting along well, but in this book, like in Chain of Gold, they were really not getting along. Alistair was a bully and they was like not getting along, but there was so much potential that we saw that and we knew that Alistair's character will evolve throughout the trilogy, which I agree, it's something that is prominent in this as well, where he is trying to fix his faults. So James and Cordelia get married with their fake marriage of convenience sort of thing, and they move out into their own house, but they live separately, as in two different rooms, but they start building up a bond, and James starts realizing that he likes her and things like that, but Grace has a hold on to him which makes him forget past memories he had with Cordelia of reasons that made him fall in love with Cordelia. And for him, she's always going to be a best friend, but they can't stop spending time with each other. So while all this is going on, while James is getting to know Cordelia and building up a relationship, a friendship, or their bond, Grace starts making her hold on James even more tighter. But the more and more James and Cordelia's bond starts building up, there is something that is playing with the spell on James, which threatens Grace as well. So she does her best to hold onto her, also onto James. While all this is happening, like they thought, okay, after the Prince of Hell was defeated and the greater demon was chased away, that everything will go back to normal for them. But actually they were quite wrong, because all of a sudden they find shadow hunters dead and runes missing from them, and they were not demon attacks, so they were trying to find, so they know it has to be either a shadow hunter or a mundane with sight, because there were no demon residue or anything that could imply that a demon did this. So again, the Merry Thieves, Cordelia, Lucy, all of them are caught up with this, with the murders, and James, like, he stopped being dragged into, or he stopped being he stopped falling into Shadow Realm after the Prince of Hell was wounded, and he thought, okay, that was it. But then he starts seeing the murders through his eyes as if he is committing the murders, and then they try to see if there is a connection between that. And in the meantime, Cortana starts burning Cordelia's hand, and Cordelia thinks because of her fake marriage and deceiving people with this marriage that she's not worthy to hold Cortana, and that's why Cortana is burning her. So she tries to fix Cortana, she tries to find a way to see what's actually going wrong. And if we take Lucy, Lucy is now actually working in hand or along with Grace to bring Jesse back to life with necromancy, which, trust me, like I was screaming, Lucy, don't, it's such a bad idea. And she learns about her powers more and more, and she, like, I loved Lucy and Jesse's relationship because she starts falling in love with him even though he's a ghost, and she dives deep into finding out what actually happened to Jesse. Why did he die because of the rune? Like, what was so wrong? Like, Tatiana didn't want them to be anything close to what Shadowhunters were, but Jesse always wanted to be a Shadowhunter as he was born as one, but though Tatiana didn't want, he somehow convinced Tatiana to give the rune to him, and then he passed away on the same day because the rune didn't agree on him. So she tries to see what else is there behind this story, what is this that they don't know, and how come she's the only one who can see his ghost, she and Tatiana and Grace, of course. Trust me guys, I have a funny feeling that this ghost is also in on the plan with Tatiana and Grace for some reason, and like, I don't trust him, so I am scared for Lucy and her relationship. So I'll come back to that part towards the end. We'll get back to Matthew and the Merry Thieves. So, like, when Shadowhunters start falling dead, they start finding reasons. Christopher and Thomas, like, Christopher is like this total cute science geek fellow who is always experimenting and blowing things up. So if you all, I'm again telling you all, if you all read Tales of Shadow Academy, you all will get to know these Merry Thieves, these guys, and Christopher's shenanigans. While Christopher is doing all these experiments, Cordelia and James try to find what's wrong with these murders. Lucy and Grace starts working on finding a way to bring Jesse Blackthorn back, and we also see how Anna's character develops and like her rendezvous with Ariadne and things like that. So we see a lot of things with these side characters, which was really exciting. And then we also see how Anna's heart was broken in Ghost of Shadow Market, and how she's trying to keep her heart safe. So that was really touching. Like, I really like the strength of Anna Lightwood. She has accepted that she is gay and she likes women, and she's still trying to protect her heart from this woman who broke her heart, or this girl who broke her heart, who has now realized that she did a big mistake and is trying to win Anna back. We see Matthew struggling with the torment of what happened, what he did, and he has not told anyone, but he discloses it to Cordelia. And we also see that Matthew is secretly in love with Cordelia. So that is another love triangle. I'm telling you, Cassandra Clare is the queen of fantasy and queen of love triangle. So it's a lot of pain there because he has to stand by and watch James being married to Cordelia, but actually not loving Cordelia because it's a fake marriage. But he also sees Cordelia is like head over heels for James, so he is suffering with that as well on her side. And he is always drunk. He gets into drinking. That's something like we see in Chain of Gold as well. Not only this, but we see it more prominently here, trying to be addressed here, because there is a discovery of what Cordelia learns about her father that is totally relatable to what she sees in Matthew. So everyone is worried about Matthew. We see him struggling to overcome his grief and things that happen. We see Alistair's character changing, like he tries to right his wrongs, and we see that the Merithieves are trying to accept who he is. We see that James does actually love Cordelia, and that true love can break any spell. Coming back to Cortana burning Cordelia's hand, Cordelia tries to find ways, and then she meets this fairy in the Hell Rule, which is like a salon, a pub sort of thing run by one of the warlocks called Hypatia Vex, as well as Malcolm Fade. If y'all have read the Dark Artificers series or trilogy by Cassandra Clare, y'all know who Malcolm Fade is. So trust me guys, there are so many things happening here in this book. Like, this was also like 600, 550-ish pages long, but it's packed. Both of these books are actually packed. So anyway, Cordelia meets this fairy who tells her that Wayland the Smith is actually still alive and he is not dead, and this mythical location where they can find him. But Cordelia actually at first doesn't give much attention to this, but when in battle Cordelia disarms herself by getting burned for the hilt of Cortana, she thinks that it's not going to work if she is supposed to use Cortana. If she is the wielder or the bearer of Cortana, she needs to get it fixed, otherwise it's going to compromise her during these attacks. So she goes with Matthew looking for this person, and like other shadow hunters who have gone looking for him have not been so lucky, but she stumbles upon him and he makes her the paladin, makes her his paladin, which is like the warrior, chosen warrior sort of thing, to fight against her with his strength, and cures Cortana for her, which makes her actually like a hero. And she was actually really excited about it because Cordelia is a character full of emotions. She wants to do good to others. Like, she wants to be a hero not for the fame, but because she could help others and things like that. When I was reading that scene, I actually was wondering how come this is so easy, how come she met the Smith Wayland or Wayland the blacksmith, and like how easy it was for him to make her his paladin. Like, I found something fishy. So I like, you get that sinking feeling in most of the scenes here, which I actually liked. And I think after I read Caraval, I have anyway been like suspecting every character I meet. So I loved that suspense. I love the plot twists and things like that. This book ends in a place where I just wanted to hug the book, crawl under a stone and never come out. It ends in a place where I can't explain, because that's like the climax of it, and that's where it hurts. When everyone tells you you are going to be broken, you are going to be crying, or you're going to feel like you are lost when you read Chain of Iron, guys, believe it, because I thought people were just exaggerating. I didn't think any book could hurt me as much as the Infernal Devices or the ending of Clockwork Princess did, but I was so wrong. I feel like this book is in that God level for me, along with the Infernal Devices, because the ending of this hurt me so much. This book is full of bad timing tropes, miscommunication tropes, and love triangles, and like Grace tries so much to like control, manipulate James, and James finally figured out what happened because his love for Cordelia was so strong that it actually broke the curse, the spell, and he figured out what was happening and he confronted Grace and things like that. But Cordelia witnesses this confrontation in a different way because James had not actually communicated or spoken to Cordelia about what was happening and things like that. So Cordelia thinks no matter the promise he gave her, that he was breaking it. And at the same time, Lucy, who was experimenting in ways to bring Jessie back on her own along with Grace, did something that put her into a bad position where she and Jessie disappears at the end. So James never gets a chance to explain to Cordelia before like she left, because he had to give that up and go find Lucy. So I also said this book has a connection with the Dark Artificers, a big connection, because you find out how Malcolm Fade found out about Annabelle. From both books, the villains are actually the Prince of Hell, Tatiana Blackthorne and Grace Blackthorne. And like I said, I have some feeling that Jessie Blackthorne, ghost or no ghost, is also still alive. And we do find out who the killer is, who the killer and the rune stealer in this book is, who is killing all these all these shadow hunters without leaving a trace. We find out who that is, and if I reveal that point of the story, that then it's definitely going to be a big spoiler, so I can't do that. But trust me guys, from all the books I have read this year, Chain of Iron and Chain of Gold are going to be in my top 2 for sure. And this book too, as I have the collector's first edition, had some nice things, because I used to get different artwork throughout the book here and there. Let me see. Yeah, so here and there we get artwork, and as well as there was a bonus story of Magnus and Jem in the spiral labyrinth, where they are tasked to do something which leads to where Jem and Magnus were not there to help James and Cordelia, Will and Tessa when the murders were happening in London in this book. So it just pieces the two together. This was more fast paced than Chain of Gold for me for some reason. I was just hooked from the very beginning of this book, so I just didn't want to let down. And like Chain of Gold, where we had blast into the past with flashbacks from James' perspective, this book had the past of Grace, how she became who she is now and why and things like that, as well as stories or the perspective of the killer were also captured there. So it was very interesting. And in this book you see more and more how friendship is a powerful thing, just as love is a powerful thing, which I thought was a spot on dynamic. Again, this book was also heavily character driven, which I loved, which I saw most into a lot of the characters. And really, I have nothing bad to tell about this book. And with that, I have come to the end of this video. I know it wasn't an actual review, but I think I have a lot to say, but actually this video is very emotional because I'm still caught up in this book and the feelings I'm having from this book, and I actually don't know how to tell everything that I'm feeling. I know this video is already very lengthy and things, but I am telling you that you should read these 2 books at least, or wait till Chain of Thorns comes out and then read it, because this trilogy is amazing. Herondales do love fiercely and Herondales do break the reader's hearts. And with that, I'm signing off for today. See y'all in my next video. Bye and stay safe from Oh My Word Melly.